First five verses of Surah Al-Baqarah talk about the traits, personality of the believer. From verse 6 to 20, Allah mentions the traits and the personality of the disbelievers and the hypocrites, and how they act with regards to Allah, His commands, the afterlife, their dealings with the believers, their secret conversations and plotting against others around them. Verse 21 until 29, Allah addresses the people in general out there in the world and to remind them who their Lord is. And then He also addresses the believers in between these verses, the reward they'll get for believing in their Lord in the next life. And then Allah poses a couple of questions to mankind at large. Then from verse 30 until 39, Allah talks about the story of creation, the story of Adam alayhi salam, his creation specifically, and how angels respond and what shaitan does at that point. And moving on from there, this is the first ever story introduction to the beginning of our creation, where it all started. Whereas 40 all the way up until verse 103, the address is for the children of Israel. What Allah gave them, what Allah blessed them with, and their response and their reaction towards the messenger of Allah, which was Musa alayhi salam back then, and how he was treated by his people, how they reacted to him, how they would constantly question him, be aggressive towards him, change Allah's commands and rulings. And then Allah gives us some parables and examples and tells the believers what to stay away from, what not to do. That's why the story is mentioned here. And this is the main theme found within the second chapter of the Quran. The story of Jews, where Allah narrates that He saved them from Pharaoh, how He brought them to peace, and every single time they would just go against Allah's commands and commandments and try to seek loopholes. And this is a reminder for the believers to not do that. And Allah also mentions how they dislike some of Allah's angels. And for more information, I want you to read the surahs. I can give you the names and clues, but I want you to read the chapter, these verses, connect with them, and find out on your own who those angels were. 104 until 112, Allah addresses the believers again, reminding them what He has made obligatory upon the believers, such as prayer, giving charity, believing in Allah and His messengers, and what to stay away from, because there is an essential component every believer has to have in his life, especially in his heart, for him to be admitted to paradise. From verse 113 until 123, the topic switches back to Bani Israel, the children of Israel, and Allah addresses them and tells us what they were up to and what they need to be really looking into. From verses 124 until 141, which is the end of the first juz, you have the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam with his son, the story of Yaqub alayhi salam with his sons. The first juz ends with a verse that is repeated on the previous page too, in the last line, which is what Allah tells us should be our focus in this life. That you gotta look after your deeds, because the previous nations are responsible for their deeds. You're not responsible for them. They are not responsible for you. So every person and nation needs to look into what they are contributing and taking into their afterlife.